against Thiago Oliveira. He's on the left here. He's playing Teamer. Tom Ross is on a very slow Obzon deck, focusing on Ivory Tusk Fortress and High Sentinels of Arashin. High Sentinels was a card that you've been saying is among the top rares in the set.
Well, when I did my deck tech last night with Chris Van Meter, he said that he believed it was the second best rare in the set behind Wingmate Rock. So that is high praise in a format that features cards like Sarkin and Hostilities and a number of other very powerful cards. Siege Rhino. That High Sentinels was the one that he picked out as number 2.
Yeah, card actually with great synergy, especially with something like the Ivory Tusk Fortress. Tom also opened a pair of Ghost Fire Blades, card I've been pretty excited about in Limited. But that will be underway. Both players starting out with some mana development on a dual land. You see a fetch there from Thiago Oliveira. Thiago is playing a base Teamer deck with just a little bit of white in it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, Rakshasa Death Dealer is the turn 2 play for Tom Ross here.
Tom does not like to let people get settled into the match. You know, get them under the gun as fast as possible, and Rakshasa, one of the best cards in the format for doing that.
Absolutely. Thiago is almost a mid-range aggro deck here, if you want to call it that. Playing cards like Alpine Grizzly with the hope of triggering Ferocity on some of these other cards.
Alpine Grizzly is very powerful at triggering Ferocious. It does not have the best stats in terms of a morph-defined format because it's still at 2 toughness, but if you're looking to turn on Ferocious at lower rarities, it's one of the best, most efficient enablers.
All right, and Thiago for the turn is going to play a Bloodfire Mentor. Actually a pretty good answer to the Death Dealer.
It is. 5 toughness, so it requires Tom to get 2 activations of Rakshasa to get through it, so that's going to slow the game down a little bit, which is what Thiago needs to do because Rakshasa deals so much damage so quickly.
Yeah, the Death Dealer for black-green gets +2/+2, and he regenerates for black-green. In true Tom Ross fashion, you're going to make a land and immediately swing the Death Dealer into the 0/5. Imagine he'll make the block. And indeed, he does. Tom could have a card like Awaken the Bear, but otherwise, this is probably just bouncing off the 0/5.
And the attack's free. A lot of players miss these sort of attacks. You know, there's some percentage of the time that Thiago is not going to block here, and then that free points of damage, those free 2 points of damage is a big deal.
Yeah, Tom's play for turn 3 was a morph. It was Watcher of the Roost. If he has a white card, he can flip it up for free and get that 2/1 flyer. And we see Tri-land for Thiago. Sandstep Citadel and Alpine Grizzly. He'll go ahead and pass. Thiago treading water pretty well right now from not being too threatened by that Rakshasa Death Dealer. Remember, to double pump him, all your mana has to be black or green, so these 2 planes that Tom has played don't make any progress toward getting through the 0/5.
As threatening as the start is, as you mentioned, he is in the clear for the time being.
Yeah.
Now, it looks like Tom's hand is 4 spells, it appears, so might be some trouble down the way, but...
Yeah, he has Murderous Cut. You see he reveals High Sentinels of Arashin there to Thiago. That's a pretty big piece of information to have to reveal.
I imagine he's just casting it, which is why you're seeing
Right.
this.
I was going to say, because he also had Obzon Battle Priest in hand, which, if you didn't know, those two create a deadly combo here.
Good luck racing.
Yeah, High Sentinels, reason why people are ranking it among the top rares as a 3/4 flyer for 4. It is quite a good creature in its own right, but then it has the other abilities where it makes the rest of your team large and becomes large in the process.
And it's also single color, so it's hard to be missing colors and be unable to cast it, which is a feature of some of the other more powerful rares and mythics in the format.
Yeah, you can even splash it because it doesn't even have double white in its mana cost. Back over to Thiago's side. He's going to swing with Alpine Grizzly into Death Dealer and High Sentinels. You see he has an Arrow Storm, Teamer Charm, and Jeskai Charm. Tom trading the Death Dealer for the Alpine Grizzly.
And I think what's going on there is Tom saying, well, I'm never going to be able to pump this Rakshasa past the 0/5 here, so I might as well just trade. It's not a pretty trade, but that Rakshasa is not doing very much else.
Yeah, I actually think Rakshasa Death Dealer is one of the cards that might be overhyped right now, at least in a format like Sealed. I think in things like Constructed or Draft, it's very powerful, but it requires a lot of mana to make itself truly relevant in Sealed.
Tom's got 5 planes in his deck, and those cards are just straight bricks alongside Rakshasa.
Yeah, Thiago is going to use the Jeskai Charm to put High Sentinels back on top of Ross's deck, buying him time to cast this Arrow Storm on it when Tom recasts.
This is a lot of quality resources being used to manage this High Sentinel, unfortunately, for Thiago. It is better than just losing the game, but losing an Arrow Storm and a Jeskai Charm, that's a huge cost.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he had the option of playing Teamer Charm to have Alpine Grizzly fight it down and just 2-for-1ing himself. Looking like he doesn't want to 2-for-1 here. He wants just the 1-for-1s.
It's a little bit early to be deploying that.
And there we go. Aerostorm takes down High Sentinels. 1 bullet dodge there. And he actually did it before Tom could get a counter on any creature. If Tom had time to get a counter on that Watcher of the Roost, then the Abzan Battle Guide in his hand, when it cast, would be so much more effective as it would have given the Watcher lifelink.
For sure, given the quality of the cards Tom has played thus far and the relatively anemic cards Thiago's done a very good job of keeping himself in this game.
I love that our relatively anemic cards include things like Jeskai Charm. I completely agree with you, too.
Compared to Rakshasa and a High Sentinel, yes.
Yeah. And we see, looks like River Wheel Aerialists is the play for Thiago. And this uncommon, this is another one of those types of cards that gets a lot better in sealed. It's just a 4/5 flying with prowess, but a huge flyer is something most sealed decks are in the market for.
Not the smoothest, most elegant card, but again, very high power once it's gotten to play. We've sort of taken these cards for granted as creatures in Magic have gotten just better over the last couple of years, but this is still, even though it's not the best card you can be playing, still plenty impactful.
All right, and Tom starts the Outlast here with Abzan Battle Priest and makes it a lot scarier with the addition of the Abzan Falconer to the table as well.
Tom shifting gears a little bit, and now with the pace of the game slowing down a bit, you're going to try to leverage some of these Outlast cards, and that's a really nice tandem to have.
Yeah, all those guys with 1/1 counters will now have lifelink and flying. He should, in theory, be able to race these Aerialists. Looks like Thiago's not going to let him get there. He's preparing to Teamer Charm to fight something. We'll see what it is.
It seems like the priority, if I were in Thiago's seat, is to take down the lifelinker because he has the air pretty well controlled.
Yeah, the Battle Priest already does have a counter on it, so there's already been an investment there as well. Certainly, once Tom gets the Battle Priest up to a 5/4, where it can swing through the Bloodfire Mentor, that would mean that Thiago would have to hold back the Aerialists.
Exactly. So, even though the Falconer is the more powerful card in the abstract, I think Thiago should probably just take down the Battle Priest here.
We'll see which one he goes for. It's going to be Teamer Charm. Aerialist is going to fight against. See, he is making the same decision here.
It's not easy, but I do like the call that Thiago's making here.
Yep, takes down Abzan Battle Priest. Tom gets to gain 3, goes to 25. But that's a double pump on the Aerialists. 1 from Prowess, 1 from Teamer Charm, and a swing of 6 should drop Tom down to 20. And things are actually pretty good here for Thiago. He has the largest flyer on the board. He also now has enough mana to start using this Bloodmark Mentor.
No, Tom still with several spells in hand here, and they look to be fairly high.
Yeah.
Impact one's a Murderous Cut, an Abzan Guide.
An Abomination of Gadul is the third one.
It's a very solid hand. No blue mana yet, but, you know.
Yeah, so he's going to play the Abzan Guide face down, swing the Watcher of the Roost, and outlast the Falconer. Banner was the draw for Thiago. Discards a land to it. The Abzan Guide will be a problem here if Thiago decides that he wants to race. He obviously doesn't know about it yet. See, his cards are Hordling Outburst, a banner, and another basic land.
He at least has the guide checked by having an 0/5, but it is still gaining 4 life a turn, is making it really hard because Thiago's really only attacking with his own 4/5 right now.
Yeah. And despite not being the best in combat, to me that's why Abzan Guide is so backbreaking in these limited games, is he just negates a whole strategy. If Thiago decides to race, you know, that race will look foolish if Tom flips up this Abzan Guide.
Yeah, you get to dictate the terms of engagement. You get to set the pace.
Mardu banner here for Thiago. Aerialists will swing. They have prowessed once from the banner. Tom with no... He's going to go ahead and Murderous cut the Aerialists. He has just enough mana to delve and do that. And Thiago is dangerously low on resources right now.
He's about out. Now, he does have a banner that he can sacrifice. He still has a looter in play. Maybe he can cobble something together, but he's definitely way behind right now.
Yeah, and at 13 life, he doesn't have unlimited turns to do this as we pass back to Tom. Tom already with 5 power in the air and Thiago without any flyers. And here is one of Tom's 2 Ghost Fire Blades. It's a card, it's 1 to cast, 3 to equip, gives a creature +2/+2. You can equip it on the cheap if you equip it to a colorless creature. But Tom was going to go ahead and skip that option and just throw it onto a flyer.
And very little equipment in this set, too. So not a card you see very often. Not a card type you see very often, rather.
Yeah. 7 power in the air for Thiago, puts him down to 6. That's going to be lethal next turn if he doesn't find something to deal with it. Loots his way into a land, that's no help. And now he gets to use the special part of Ghost Fire Blade. For 1, he moves it over to the Morph.
What a deal.
At 1 to play, 1 to equip. It's a really good card.
Yeah.
And what's nice is when you put it on a Morph, then when you unmorph the creature, the Ghost Fire Blade is still on him.
Which then allows his guy to punch through an 0/5, assuming that we get to that point.
We will see. It looks like a Teamer banner was drawn from Thiago. He's going to main phase loot. Finds Jeskai Wind Scout.
I'm assuming no copies of End Hostilities in this list.
His only mono white card is a Smite the Monstrous. That's what he's splashing for, which actually is a card I really like splashing for. In Sealed in particular, that card to me has really performed above expectations.
It is a slow, kind of cumbersome format about big stuff. So situational removal spells like that, would you have gone out of your way to play that card in M15 Sealed? Probably not. Not a candidate for splashing, most likely. But here, in this format, it seems very well suited to the task.
All right, so game 1 goes to Tom Ross. I want to look at both players' decks here. Alpine Grizzly, to me, is a card that's interesting just in how different of opinions I hear on it. So this is the vanilla 4/2 for 3 mana. It's got some downsides. First one being that it still trades with a Morph, but is a 3-drop that trades with a Morph and has no upside in that it can't get bigger, it can't flip up. The plus to it is that it's very good. It can also trade with an Abzan Guide and trigger your Ferocity. Do you view this as a card that is bad, is good, and you just play it, or that it's format dependent as to whether, deck dependent as to whether you even want it?
I think you're still supposed to play it, but it is a very polarized card. There's some situations where it's extremely powerful, relatively speaking. You need to trigger Ferocious relatively early in the game. That's great. And if your opponent happens to stumble on lands, not have a Morph on turn 3, it can deal a lot of damage. It also is frequently trading with the worst card in their hand, and it's susceptible to basically every removal spell. So I think that if you are playing with ferocious cards, you kind of have to play it. And I would imagine there's no base green Seal deck that's ever cutting this card, but it does have moments of being superstar and having moments of being not even really a card in play.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting the creature choices he's gone for with his Teamer deck. If you look at his green cards, the cards he's decided to play are Alpine Grizzly, a Hooting Mandrills, and a Pine Walker. So he wants some sizable creatures, but is not really in the market for tricks here. You see Awaken the Bear, Dragon Scale Boon, both in the sideboard, for example.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that being correct just because, again, the nature of the format is very, we're building up our boards and power matters. When that's the pacing of the game, then low-impact combat tricks are not going to be that great. And once you're in the world where it's, I'm playing a 4th color, I'm splashing for a removal spell, I'm playing a 0/5 looter, you're sort of declaring I'm trying to play a long attrition game where I have the best stuff left at the end of things. And pump spells don't really fit in that kind of game plan. But things like Awaken the Bear still will have moments of being a potent card, even for slower decks, but I totally respect leaving it in the sideboard, even though I think a lot of players would instinctually say, of course I'm playing a good Giant Growth.
Yeah, I tend to agree. He is, for the most part, playing he's choosing to play more creatures over playing combat tricks for his creatures.
Trying to win these long, slow games. And that's another sweet thing about the sealed format is there's a lot of room for not just take my 23 best cards and slap them together, but what kind of deck am I trying to build? What kind of game plan am I trying to execute?
I think that's been one of the more interesting things as you've seen sets where most cards are playable in one circumstance or another. When every card is playable, then suddenly it becomes about archetype choices, which I think are kind of more interesting than power level based decks.
Yeah, archetype choices as opposed to, well, these are my 23.
These are the good cards.
These are my good cards, so it kind of just builds itself.
Both players here starting on a tri-land. It's Sandstep Citadel for Thiago and Frontier Bivouac for Tom. And Archer's Parapet is the play for Thiago. He's playing it as just a 0/5. He actually does have his black mana in play, but it's most times he'll not be able to activate it.
And you can't really play combat tricks and 0/5 walls in the same deck. Or you can, but you're going to get some really bad hands. So you get to be one deck or the other, and Thiago has chosen to be the 0/5 wall deck.
All right, see, a third land for Thiago is tapped. Tom will start with a morph. We'll take one. No, we'll not take one on his end step.
Not sure if he's maybe missed the fact that he had black mana.
I mean, his deck typically will not have black mana. It seems reasonable that you just wouldn't notice it. Fourth land here for Thiago. And Jeskai Wind Scout.
One of the top blue commons.
Yeah, this is a card I really like in draft. It's you know, the 2-power flyer for 3 is generally very good and limited. This one, because it has upside, it is, as you said, one of Blue's best commons.
I can't imagine Thiago not blocking with the parapet here.
Yeah, Tom swings his morph. Thiago will put the 0/5 in front of it. Tom's going to check the morph. There is, the one that would get him would be Canyon Lurkers here. That's a 4 mana. For 3 in a red, it flips up to be a 5/2, and that would take out the parapet. Other than that, I think he is safe.
Ruthless Ripper is the other bad one here, if Tom were to have it.
Tom has neither, or at least chooses not to unmorph and just plays a second morph here. See, Thiago's going to swing the Wing Scout for 2. That puts Tom to 19, and it is Bear's Companion as the follow-up play.
Sometimes designs can be really charming without having a lot of text on them, and Bear's Companion is absolutely one of them. Just the simple text box, the art, and the name sells this thing. It's not that fancy, but it's a heartwarming design.
Yeah, he's the 2/2 that comes with a 4/4 green bear token. So you see there, joining the companion.
They're hanging out, having a good time.
Yeah, pass back. Tom plays a 5th land and passes back. Remember, the 5 is really the number in this set as to how much it costs to unmorph most of the things. So Thiago will swing them both. We'll see whether Tom wants to make any blocks. By swinging both creatures, there's a risk of Obzon Guy just coming and gaining all the life back. That risk is now averted as River Wheel Aerialists was the play for Thiago. And Tom does have Obzon Guide, so he'll now flip it up on end step. But a 4/5 lifelink will need some help if it wants to beat through the 4/5.
Though this is such a, juicy spot for Tom to bluff because Thiago has the out of just blocking with the parapet if he doesn't want to risk his 4/5 flyer into combat. So I think Tom will attack almost certainly just because Tom likes to bluff a lot as a Magic player, and Thiago has a pretty safe out here to avoid getting rocked by any trick too badly.
Yeah, Tom also has a pair of Savage Punches in his hand, so he could do a lot of damage with this Obzon Guide.
All right, well, if he has Savage Punches, then he's going to play it a lot more straight up, which is, I think, killing
Punch
a
the
bunch
aerialists.
He's going to start a punching, I think.
I really want him to punch the bear, because it would be very flavorful, see. Right now, he's going to punch the aerialists. And then he's going to, right off the art of the card, he's going to go ahead and throw a punch at that bear.
Couldn't script it any better.
And the Obzon Guide should be dead right now.
No, because it's +2/+2 from the...
Yeah, it fought a 4/5 and a 4/4.
Oh, yeah, you're correct.
And he goes for a swing here. I think we are going to resolve that. Yeah, if he punched the aerialist and then he punched the bear, the Abzan guy did take 8. So on the second Savage punch.
Yeah, those creatures, yeah, it's a fight. It's not just.
Yeah, it's not just deal. It's not a.
Yeah, not compare stats.
Probably fighting was that just what the bigger one wins, no damage.
Yeah.
Fight is choose two. Yeah. So Abzan guy did lose. He killed both creatures, but the second time.
And now Tom may not want to use this debilitating injury on the 2/2 because I think the only reason he was doing that was to free up his Abzan guy to attack.
Yeah. The rules are when an illegal game action like that happens, Tom's not locked into playing. You go back to when the illegal thing happened, which was that the Abzan guy didn't die. Because Tom played the debilitating injury after that, he's not. He gets to pick it back up. He's not locked into putting it on Bear's Companion.
So there was no real way for Tom to navigate that and clear out both the 4/4s. He could have chopped down, say, a 2/1 flyer, taking care of a 2/2, and left Thiago with a bear after it was all said and done. But if he wanted to get his, take out both the 4/4s, there was no way for him to save his Abzan guide.
And a great draw for Thiago. He swung with the Bear's Companion. Tom didn't offer to trade the morph, so Thiago had a post-combat Mardu Heart Piercer that just took out the morph, which was Sidisi's pet. And you see
both these players at really high life totals, and that's an important thing here too to remember, is even though Thiago's had some very good exchanges, he's ahead on the board, there's a lot of time for Tom to draw out.
We'll see here. Tom without creatures on the board right now is going to keep taking damage off that Heart Piercer, but he's at a very healthy life total from that Abzan guide. Remember, both times Abzan guide fought, he had lifelink. You see, right now, an untap here from Thiago. Is that face down card a morph? All right, Mardu Heart Piercer is going to swing here. That is, I believe, a morph on Tom's side. You see there. With 5 mana up, that'd be a pretty ambitious attack.
Well, he does have a Jeskai charm. And something to keep in mind is when a morph moves zones, even if it's going on top of the deck, it has to be revealed. So if for no other reason than information, Thiago could try to feel it out a little bit.
It looks like he'll get a tempo play. Tom's going to block, reveal Broodkin Krumar Bondkin. And Thiago's going to Jeskai Charm it to put it on top of the deck. So Tom draws the Bondkin. I like that he plays it immediately face down right off the top. I wonder what card that is.
Could be anything.
Could be Krumar Bondkin again. Thiago had the opportunity there to, if he wanted to, he could have pumped the Mardu Heart Piercer and 2-for-1 himself to kill the Bondkin. And draw for the turn. Believe he has the kill spell now for it.
Seems like we're a little bit still relatively early in the game, kind of from what's the pace look like and what are the life totals for Thiago to make those kind of exchanges,
Yeah, the draw was Swift Kick. A decent card, but he will have to 2-for-1 himself if he wants to kill the Bondkin that way. With Tom at 21, he may not want to, he may just want to hang on to the removal spell.
Yeah. I can understand, you want to kill this 5/3, but there's a lot of magic left to be played in this game, so I don't think Thiago has to go making these really risky plays to try to clear out a 5/3.
Yeah, another card in Thiago's hand is Singing Bell Strike. Another card that's very good when you're tempoing your opponent out, but right now is not a great removal spell.
Yeah, good early, but gets pretty bad pretty fast.
And seriously, what he's going to do, Thiago swings the Heart Piercer. Tom elects not to block. He flips up his Bondkin, and then still on Thiago's own end step, he's going to Swift Kick the 2 of them to make them trade. And He may be wondering if he can Swift Kick in response to Morph.
Morph does not use the stack.
Right, so you can't say before he's a 5-3, I Swift Kick him. Yeah. And I think Thiago was informed. Do you think he attempted to do that in response to the Morph and was informed that that is not, he does not have priority there?
If a Morph turning face up generates a trigger, you can respond to the trigger going on the stack.
But he's still face up.
But it's still face up. You cannot say, I'll shock your Morph in response to you unmorphing it. Once it's up, that's what it is.
Bondkin here swings. Thiago takes 5, hits back with Heart Piercer, and it will be Hooting Mandrills. Cast for 2 mana by Thiago. Still has that Swift Kick, Singing Bell Strike in hand. He'll gain 1 from a land here. And Tom's just been playing lands for the last few turns. He's actually just now has fallen behind in the race.
Yeah, he was keeping his head above water, but now, he's facing down, 2 creatures, and this parapet is also, it's not a huge clock, but it's another factor.
Yeah, Thiago has started using the parapet on Tom's end steps. And Smite the Monstrous will be played on Kumar Bondkin. That was a top deck for Thiago. Remember, he's splashing white just for that card.
And this is all sorts of bad for Tom now because that Swift Kick is still in hand. So there's a lot of creatures he could draw here that don't even get to survive to Tom's on tap.
Yeah, Tom goes to 9, down to 8. Now this swing puts him to 6, and it looks like we're going to be going to a 3rd game here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Tom just flooded out a bit that game in the end. But at 1-1, we'll be going to a 3rd game between these two.
And the parapet gets to deal the last few points.
Yeah, actually, so these Archer's Parapet there are a lot of these 5 and 6 toughness creatures in the set. So you have cards like Archer's Parapet, Dragon's Eye Savants, Sage Eye Harrier. A lot of these cards have 1/5s, 0/5s.
Monastery Flock.
Monastery Flock, exactly. What are your thoughts on these big toughness guys? Originally, I thought they'd be not so good, but I've seen them be very impressive in some matches.
They are surprising. I would have written them all off as basically being unplayable, but there's enough of 3/4s, 4/3s, 3/4s going around that 5 toughness blockers are reasonable. They have utility in most games, and the parapet, the clock is not dramatic, but it does compel the other side to act. You cannot sit around all day, and so. It's a fine card on turn 2, and then when you have it on turn 10 still in play, it's not the end of the world. It's not just a blank 0/5 wall. That pressure means something.
Completely agree. So you're going to game 3. Be interesting to see. Tom will get the choice of play versus draw here. And this is always one thing that you've said this is a slower format. And historically in Magic, that has meant that players want to go on the draw in sealed. Just the idea not so much being that you need the extra card, but it's that the tempo doesn't matter so much, so you can afford to take the extra card, and it fixes your mana. That extra card prevents stumbling by a lot. Would you think this is are you playing or drawing right now?
It's tough to say. I think it's really deck dependent. Part of the problem with drawing is that it's also a morph format, and morph formats are really conducive to desiring the play because you want to be the one attacking with mana available into an opponent who does not have mana available. So when you get out in front of the board, blocking is very challenging for your opponent, and it's very easy to, leverage your initial tempo gains into a game win. So the mana bases are definitely a factor. The slow pace of the games, generally speaking, is a factor, but morph is a mechanic that really rewards the player on the play. So depending on how much of that is going on in both decks, I think that dictates the decision. So I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's just dependent on what's going on in your deck and what's going on in your opponent's deck.
Yeah, I mean, the morph case is pretty big. There is a catch to that. So the idea is if you play a turn 3 morph and then I play one, and if you get on tap on turn 4, you can almost free roll an attack at me. There aren't too many morphs. I think this was actually designed this way. So if you play your 4th land, there aren't morphs that if I block, you can just unmorph your guy and kill my blocker.
Yeah, there actually are 0 in the set at 4 mana or less, but then you start looking at things like Dragon Scale Boon, you start looking at things like Defiant Strike. There are other tricks. It's not just you're safe when you're blocking against opponent 4 mana. And Dragon Scale Boon is especially bad because now there's a 4/4 in play. It may morph into something even larger the next turn, and the game might end before it even really gets started.
Yeah, I would say the Dragon Scale Boon is certainly the most punishing one in that situation. The deck I wouldn't want to be on the draw against would be people trying to utilize Prowess. I think, to me, like, that's the one that really you want to be out ahead on tempo.
And Raid as well, and it looks like Tom has elected to take the play.
So and his deck is pretty defensive, right? He's playing Sage Eye Harriers. He has foregone a lot of the more aggressive creatures to just play walls and big things.
His mana base is also not the best. You know, he's taking some risk here being on the play, but he must feel that the tempo of the morphs in the format makes it so that you want to be the one going first.
Tom going to start on a pair of basics. Thiago on a pair of dual lands. He starts at 22. He'll pass back. Tom has with a Sagu Mauler there, it looks like. He's going to start with Abzan Falconer as his play for the turn.
We'll see how many sources of blue here there are in Tom's list. He has a Thornwood Falls. He has a Frontier Bivouac rather, and I believe one other dual land. So it's a speculative splash here, but he does have some sources of blue.
Yeah, Jeskai Wind Scout is a play from Thiago. What Tom does have, though, is once again he has this trio of Abzan Battle Priest, Abzan Falconer, and High Sentinels of Arashin all in his hand.
And with the game being played at a pretty slow pace right now from Thiago's side, he may have the time to set up a really powerful shop here.
Yeah, decides to swing with Abzan Falconer. He had some decisions here. You see he has Abzan Guide in his hand. He could have outlasted the Falconer, which that's a creature that really benefits from having a 1/1 counter on it, or playing the Morph. Decides to play the Morph.
Well, the game still may be a damage race game for all the Tom knows, so the best thing for the time being, just use all of your mana efficiently, and if the game bogs down, then you can go to the Outlast creatures as a secondary game plan.
And definitely could be a damage race. You see Thiago swinging for 2, plays a second Jeskai Wind Scout, and then a Mystic Monastery tapped. With a pair of Wind Scouts, Tom has to be worried that with the right hand, he's taking a ton of damage.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of follow-up spell here, things get really bad for Tom.
You see Tom's hand, Sagu Mauler, Teamer Charger, Abzan Battle Priest, High Sentinels of Arashin. The Battle Priest may be the biggest prize here because of its lifelink.
Although, perhaps that has changed.
Yeah, High Sentinels is still an amazing card. Tom does not have the 5th land, but he does play High Sentinels. We'll see if Thiago can answer it. You'll have to think he'll be answering it right away if he can. He has a Singing Bell Strike. That's kind of an answer.
Sort of. That's unfortunately for Tom also a prowess trigger for Thiago.
So 6 damage puts Tom down to 13. And he'll play Archer's Parapet to try to win this race. And right now, Thiago's doing okay. These High Sentinels won't get to untap. They're mostly taken care of, except for their passive ability, their activated ability, rather, of giving a creature a 1/1 counter for 4 mana.
And now, because Thiago has played the Archer's Parapet, Tom has found land number 5 for his Abzan Guide that's face down, but the cost of spending his entire turn on morphing that lifelinker now that Thiago has essentially a free block with a 0/5 wall has gone up dramatically. So I think earlier in this game, if Tom had found land number 5, he could have unmorphed this Abzan Guide and had real control over the damage race. Now that's less the case.
Looks like Tom's setting up for a big lifelink turn instead. He plays Abzan Battle Priest and then uses the Outlast ability of the Falconer to give it a counter. So remember, the Falconer is now a 3/4 flying lifelinker. As will pretty much any creature will start flying and lifelinking thanks to the High Sentinels. Thiago still needs to deal 13, and that may be a tall order.
Is that a Water World in Thiago's hand? He's only on 5 mana right now, but
he may have a water. I believe so. You see Alpine Grizzlies is play here. Water Whirl would be huge.
That would be huge.
As he put Tom to 9 that turn, but now he's just going to be treading water. Tom does have these flying lifelinkers.
Though because these are not naturally flying lifelinkers, they're outlasters, those getting set back to Tom's hand is a huge tempo shift, because it's not just about redeploying them, it's redeploying them and then activating them and then getting to do something.
Exactly.
And with Thiago generating this much pressure in the air, Tom may not have enough time to get all of this reassembled.
You see Tom with a 6th land here. He still does not have the blue mana for the Sagu Mauler. He has a Sage-Eye Harrier. That's a 1/5 flyer. He could just cast it at face value and have it be pretty good here. It's good against these 2/1s. But he's instead going to opt to race. He uses High Sentinel's ability to put a counter on the Battle Priest and then swings both Battle Priest and Falconer for 7 lifelink damage in the air. And that will trade the life totals on both sides here. So Tom will be the one at 16 and Thiago will be the one at 9. In post-combat, we just see a Teamer Charger. Any creature with 3 powers got to be pretty good when you have High Sentinels going.
Yes. They all play.
They all become huge lifelinkers. And there's the 6th land for Thiago. You have to think it's the Water Whirl is coming up.
Most likely. And Tom having access to the High Sentinel here, even though it's locked, is a huge deal because it means the reassembly of his Outlast team after the fact is a lot faster. He just gets to move counters onto them, leave them untapped, and try to control the game from there.
Yeah, you saw what he did with the Obzon Battle Priest last turn. Is rather than outlasting it for 1 mana to get the counter, he paid a full 4, but that meant the Battle Priest got the counter and was able to attack that turn.
The game has become a pure race, and so immediacy matters. Tom does not have the luxury of waiting for his creatures on tap. They just need to be ready to go.
2 cards remain in Thiago's hand. One of them believed to be a Water Whirl that will bounce 2 creatures. And there you have it. He'll bounce the Falconer and the Battle Priest. Triggers the Wind Scouts, and now they swing for 6, putting Tom down to 10.
And if you're in Tom's seat, that was the worst thing that could have happened to you. You had to feel pretty confident about your chances of winning that game, and now things have gotten a little hairy.
Yeah, he draws a Nomad Outpost. That's another splash color, but still not the blue for Sagu Mauler.
And he doesn't have enough mana this turn to redeploy both of his Outlast creatures or deploy either of them and use the High Sentinel. So his mana right now is in an awkward place.
Yeah, he really could have used an untapped land on that turn.
That would allow him to cast both, and then he's fine, most likely. But
you see, he was looking at hard casting Sage-Eye Harrier. Instead, what I believe he's doing, he just passed the turn, is he'll either flip up Obzon Guide, or he'll put a counter on one of his creatures on end step. Say he goes end step, put a counter on Teamer Charger. Then he can untap and play Falconer, Battle Priest, swing for 4 lifelink in the air.
Yes. But drawing comes into play. Tapped land this turn was really bad for Tom. And untapped land, things are much easier. Now another bounce spell, another removal spell. He probably gets tempoed out of the game.
Back on Thiago's side. He does have better presence on the board at the moment. But that's about it. Hooting Mandrills and Aerostorm are his 2 remaining cards. Now, he could have... Okay, Tom's going to pay 6 to untap the High Sentinels, and that was the play with the 6 mana here. Thiago swings both Wind Scouts. Not sure that Thiago saw that one. Sometimes you forget about the activated ability on Singing Bell Strike.
Yeah, perhaps he thought it was a beginning of combat sort of thing. Because
yeah.
he could have used the Aerostorm on it before combat. He gets 2 prowess triggers, knocks Tom fairly low, and doesn't have to worry about the Outlast creatures in Tom's hand getting replayed and reset immediately.
And Thiago is very close to having Tom at lethal. Remember, Aerostorm, thanks to Alpine Grizzly, deals 5 damage for 5. It can go to the dome. Were it not for that untap, Thiago could have Aerostormed Tom to the face and swung the Wing Scouts for the win. But as it is, Tom's at 8, and a pretty safe 8, I would think, as well. Thiago has left up Archer's Parapet mana for Tom's end step.
Though I don't believe he has access to black. I believe he's on Mystic Monastery.
Oh, that's Runescarred Crag.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there is no black.
What a difference that would make, though. I mean,
every point counts here.
Every point counts here.
Thiago needs this game to end as quickly as possible.
Yeah, not only is Tom on 4 spells in hand, but they're all
good.
all really good.
See, he may play Battle Priest and then just leave up that 4 mana. He's going to start there and then pass. So he has Battle Priest and enough mana to put a 1/1 counter on any of these creatures. See what Thiago can get here. That might help.
You can feel Tom is so close to getting this game turned around.
Right.
Just one turn where Thiago isn't applying lethal or removing one of Tom's critical creatures, he probably doesn't get another shot at it.
Remember, he has a 5-point burn spell in his hand. Tom is at 8. But he's got to be worried because with the High Sentinels and Battle Priest, it doesn't take much work for Tom to start gaining a lot of life points.
And one shot, the problem is if Thiago misses his shot, he's probably not getting another one because Tom only really needs to hit once. And he has so many different cards in play that are problematic. It's not like Thiago can just remove the High Sentinels or just remove the Battle Priest or just remove the Falconer. They're all adding up. So if he doesn't close the door soon, he's not going to get another shot at it.
Yeah, Thiago's draw for the turn was River Wheel Aerialists. A good card, but not excellent right now. Thiago may have to Aerostorm the Abzan Battle Priest as much as he doesn't want to with Tom at 8. Just the amount of life gain. I think if Tom starts gaining too much life off that Battle Priest, then there's no coming back.
But the flip side of it is you kill the Battle Priest and Tom says, okay, that's fine. Start using the High Sentinel. You're probably not punching through for the rest of the game.
And we see River Wheel Aerialists was the play from Thiago. Tom will end step put a counter on something. We'll see what it is.
The saving grace here may be that whatever Tom elects to pump, he may not be in a position to send into combat, and I really like putting on the Teamer Charger because this is something that Tom can liberally send into combat, doesn't care if it dies, and he gets a lifeline trigger. If he puts the counter on the Morph or the Battle Priest or the High Sentinel, he has to be concerned about throwing into combat because if he loses one of those creatures, they're all critical. This gives him a free way to generate some value and gain some life. Lose a piece that doesn't matter to him.
Exactly. Thiago had to, so we'll see. Tom plays Abzan Falconer. That means the Teamer Charger now has flying. And so does any other creature that Tom chooses to put a 1/1 counter on. He does have 4 mana up for the High Sentinels. And his remaining cards are still that Sage-Eye Harrier and Sagu Mauler. Teamer Charger will attack for 4. The only way Thiago could kill it would be by blocking with the Aerialists, in which case that would be a trade. So this is just a attempt at a life gain of 4 from Tom.
And again, basically free in this spot because the Teamer Charger, if Tom loses it, he's not going to shed any tears over it. The other creatures are in play. Those are the board pieces he's trying to interlock.
Yeah, well, if Thiago blocks with Aerialists, Tom will just put another 1/1 counter on Teamer Charger. And that's the strength of a card like High Sentinels is Thiago can't block, and then Tom doesn't have to put the 1/1 counter. He can use the mana to do something else. But I think that something else will just be putting another 1/1 counter on a creature. Maybe not. It's going to be Sage-Eye Harrier, actually. And leveling up the Battle Priest. So pair of flying blockers for Tom. And he's at 12. Things seem safe.
So what's the worst thing that can happen here? I guess is it Teamer Charm?
Teamer Charm is
the card I think that still may allow Thiago to steal this one.
Yeah, Teamer Charm, one of the modes is creatures with power 3 or less can't block.
And I think that would leave Tom with nothing available to block this turn.
Yeah, Thiago has one in his deck too, just a 1/of, but if he were to hit it, that should be game over.
And it makes you wonder, because I believe Tom saw it in game 1. Is he better served?
He won one and fought with it game 1, you're right.
Is he better served just leaving his High Sentinel up as insurance against that card?
I would think so here. Yeah, I think what he's playing around is a removal for his Abzan Falconer or something like that, so that suddenly his creatures wouldn't have flying.
But Tom is still in a position to win this game just on the back of the High Sentinel, and he still has an Abzan Guide face down. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's any specifically critical piece at this point. It's just an issue of not getting yourself killed.
No, I agree. Thiago laying out the attacks here, seeing if he can push 12. We know one of his cards is Arrow Storm. Don't know the other one.
I'm assuming, because Thiago is going through this, that he did not draw Temur Charm this turn, which means Tom is likely in the clear.
No, he drew a Thornwood Falls. And this is Thiago's really last chance. So Arrow Storm will take care of Abzan Battle Priest, which does stop the lifelink on Tom's side. And pumps the River Wheel Aerialists. So at least for this turn, they can swing through Sage Eye Harrier. But Thiago is well short of the 12 damage he needs to get through.
Yeah.
I think if you're Thiago, you can try to build to a board where that Temur Charm next turn still wins.
Yeah. And by Tom not chump blocking this turn, Temur Charm is likely to still be alive.
And Tom gets to untap with 9 mana. He does have an Abzan Guide. He's gonna go ahead and put a counter on both his non-flying creatures and swing in the air for the win. So there you have it. Tom Ross moves to 3-0 after a close 3 games with Thiago Oliveira.
Yeah, there was definitely a sweat, and Tom had to fade that Temur Charm the last turn, but was able to do it. And Tom Ross escapes the bye portion of the tournament, 3-0. Very nicely done.
Yeah, close match there, though, to be sure.
Oh, yeah. And, it was definitely one of those games where Tom felt like he was pretty much ahead the whole time, was in control, but there was enough things going wrong. I've been in games like that on Tom's seat where you're thinking to yourself, please just don't have the last piece of tempo, the last piece of removal, whatever you need to punch through those last couple points of damage.